Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today's video is going to be around Apple. Pretty much the entire video is going to be about Apple. The reason why I'm going to talk about Apple in this video is because those of you that are following the markets quite closely would know that Apple's had a really tough time in the last quarter or so. And the reason being is because first they started off showing a little bit of slowdown in revenue. Then they announced they're not going to announce the unit sales for iPhones, and then topped it off, they revised their guidance again a couple of weeks ago, so that's pretty much hammered the stock in the last quarter. So you can see we peaked in October, and since then it's just been a constant decline. So that's why I'm going to make this video about Apple and whether or not it is a stock to actually get into or look or potentially take advantage of after this obviously massive decline. So let's just have a quick look. Firstly, what we down by from its peak. So we're down close to 40%, and bearing in mind this is obviously a mature blue chip stock, so to be down 40% is actually quite large, especially because Apple is not necessarily that volatile usually. It's had moments where it's had some difficulty, but it's never been to this extent unless it's a financial crisis or a recession or whatever it may be. So that's why to bear that in mind. So we had some difficulties again in 2012, 2015, and now in 2018. Oh wow, I just realized that actually that we've had the last three peaks have all been spaced out evenly in 3 years apart. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but for someone who does obviously follow or who is a technical guy, which I'm not majority of, I'm not really a technical guy, I'm more of a fundamental guy. But if you were, that's something that you should have been looking at and so been spotting, just like when you do with financial crisis, that every 10 years is a crisis. So every 3 years they pretty much peak, and the decline. What's the decline in the last? Let's check. What was the decline in the last? Oh wow, 40% decline in 2012. Oh wow. So each time we've had roughly a 40%, 30 to 40% decline, and these are without us having any really economic crisis. Obviously, in 2012 there was a slowdown in growth in the US, so that's definitely to consider. But overall, Apple's had declines of 30-40%, and it seemed to recover. So as a technical guy, it might be a good time for you to buy in. But I'm just going to go through a bit more what I think about Apple in general and where I stand sort of more on a fundamental basis rather than anything else. So let's begin with just understanding now exactly where Apple lies in sort of the product life cycle or sort of the business cycle, if you will. So Apple obviously has been a growth name for many years now. Now, since the departure of Steve Jobs and Tim Cook taking place, there has been that key issue that everyone's been focusing on, and that's innovation. About how slowly, or the thing is, Apple has a technology, but how slowly they're actually releasing it to the market. They're always quite slow, behind Samsung, and they're having a problem in sort of innovating their products to be different now. The iPhone 6 is pretty much the same looking as the iPhone 10. So we've had last 3-4 years pretty much not really any innovation as such. I know we've moved from the fingerprint to now no fingerprint and face recognition, but this is still, for a tech company like Apple, it's actually quite slow and quite boring as well, if you will. They should be doing something to excite the world. They're $1 trillion company. Obviously now they've had the retracement, so they're not, but they've been, they're $1 trillion company, and they're not really doing much innovation anymore. It's more about just getting out sales, and on top of that, they've increased the product prices, which is problematic because you've got obviously the developed countries, the Western countries, all fine and happy and purchasing the product because of brand and so on. But in the developing countries like China and India, you could argue China's getting out of the developing side, but the idea being those sort of countries where they're not able to make that many sales, and India is a massive potential market for them that they're not able to capitalize on because of pricing. Why are the Indians going to spend $1,000 on a phone when they've got so much other variety, like people like, companies like Xiaomi have come into India, Oppo have, OnePlus has, would trade at roughly less than 3 times in price value of the phone. And with obviously the Indian economy and obviously seeing the large scale difference between how many people living below the poverty line, you're not going to really get people that much attracted to Apple. There's no such thing as the brand loyalty that the Westerners have with Apple that India will have. Obviously, we have had Tim Cook come out recently say, "Oh, it's blaming China and so on." But to be honest, they were also blaming China back in 2015. I think that's just a way of them to sort of get out of the bigger picture, or get investors to hide away from the big picture and look at the other aspect. But the reality is it's not China, it's actually Apple. The innovation has slowed down. The company's gone from a growth story to now a robust company, but that's something that's just churning. It's not really got that growth aspect to it anymore, and they have to revive that. They're obviously sitting on a lot of cash. The value of the cash is roughly about $50 a share, so they can buy out Apple entire sort of stock for $50 a share with cash alone. So in terms of the company itself, where it positions, it's cash rich, so that's great. So whether your downside is low in the sense of Apple's not going to go bankrupt in the next even half a decade, because even if their products start to slow down, they don't really make much money, they will still not go bankrupt because of the amount of cash and the amount of power they have. So what is the next steps for Apple? So what Apple could do is there's discussions for them to go and say to automobile industry, take over Tesla and stuff. I think the problem with that is also that Tesla is basically Elon Musk. So if anybody else does take over Tesla, it will sort of destroy the company. Obviously they can keep Elon Musk as the CEO, but I don't think he will have the same drive if Apple tries to buy out the entire company. So for Apple, I think it's better for them to stay in the line of work that they're in. It's just that they need to be more innovative and start moving on to other things. I think they were having some thoughts as well on TVs or some sort of streaming to be done, but they haven't really developed anything just yet. And I think time is sort of running out for them, because investors need to see something that will go to them. Oh wow, okay, Apple is not going to be a Nokia story. Obviously, I don't think there is any other company like what happened with Nokia. Apple took out Nokia, and Nokia pretty much went straight towards zero in a way, and they took over all the mobile business. But I don't think there's anyone out there that could take over Apple in that sense. So there will still be a company that makes money, because they've increased the average price of the product. They're happy, for them to see if the price has gone up by 20-30%. So even if they make 20-30% less sales, they'll still make the same revenue. So that aspect won't really bother them. But the problem for investors is then, how do you get growth? They need people at that price point to be more customers to be coming in for them to get that growth. So that's why it raises a big issue there. So as a trader, it might be a decent time for you guys to get in. Potentially, obviously, this is not any investment advice. Disclaimer. Anyway, you shouldn't. You should obviously seek actual legal counsel, meet financial advisors and discuss it with them. But in terms of just giving an overview, but it could be a good trade. But in terms of an investor, I don't really see the point in buying Apple. I think there are a lot of other products out there. If you look at Apple, obviously it's $600 billion company, but then you got companies like Xiaomi, which is doing really good, and it's sort of coming into the mainstream market. They're less pricey, so a lot of people in developing countries like India and so on are looking to buy these rather than Apple. So I think you should, if you're going to look for a stock in the sort of technology, phones, sort of telecommunications business, you should look outside of Apple and look into more growth names. Unless obviously if you're looking for something that it's stable, that can potentially give you 2-3% growth year on year on average the next decade, yeah, potentially Apple could be your stock. But otherwise, I think it's now moved from the growth story and it's starting to fade away. The Apple logo, obviously, there's a bite taken out of the Apple, which is their logo. I think that's definitely getting a lot smaller. So yeah, I thought I'd make a quick video about Apple, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, and let me know what stock or what you want me to talk about next. Thank you. Bye.